The first thing I noticed when I turned the corner onto my own street was the sound of chains clanking and metal groaning. My heart skipped as I saw a tow truck backing out of my driveway, dragging my utility trailer behind it. The very trailer I had parked legally on my own property, locked tight, its contents sealed and documented. It wasn't just any trailer, it was one I used for special assignments, and inside, secured by heavy cases, were training supplies and equipment clearly stamped with my department's emblem. The sight hit me like a blow to the chest. That emblem wasn't just decoration, it was a shield of authority that meant whoever touched it without clearance could face federal charges. And then I saw her, Karen, standing tall in her floral sundress that strained against her frame, sunglasses perched arrogantly on her nose, barking orders at the tow truck driver as if she were a general leading troops into battle. She turned when she saw me, lips curling into that self-satisfied smile I had grown to hate. "You're not allowed to store junk like that in this neighborhood," she declared before I could speak. "The HOA rules are clear. Trailers are eyesores, and I won't have them lowering our property values. Consider this a lesson in compliance." My blood boiled as I rushed forward. "That's not junk, that's my trailer on my property, and you had no right to touch it." But before I could reach the truck, she raised her phone high, her shrill voice carrying down the street. "This man is threatening me. He's unstable. Officers need to come immediately." She was calling 911 again, flipping the narrative, just as she had done with so many neighbors before. But this time was different. The driver hesitated as I pulled open the trailer's side door, desperate to stop him before it was hauled away. The moment the door swung open, the interior glinted with bold lettering "Police Training Division" emblazoned across a large black equipment case. The emblem shone under the afternoon sun like a warning beacon. Gasps erupted from the small crowd of neighbors who had gathered to watch. Karen's smirk faltered, her sunglasses sliding down her nose as her eyes went wide. What is that?" she stammered, her voice suddenly cracking. The driver looked nervous now, stepping back from the truck, muttering something about not wanting trouble. I pulled out my ID badge and held it up for everyone to see. "This trailer contains official law enforcement property. You just authorized the illegal towing of equipment protected under state and federal law." The silence was electric. Karen's face drained of color, then flushed bright red. "That's not possible. You're lying. The HOA rules say." Her words tumbled into chaos as one of the neighbors shouted, "Karen, you've gone too far this time." Another added, "He told you he works with the police, and you didn't listen." Suddenly the tide shifted. The same neighbors she had cowed for years with violation notices and threats of fines were turning against her, their anger swelling louder with every second. But Karen, drunk on her own delusions of power, doubled down. "I don't care if it's police property. The rules forbid trailers. I was within my rights." Her voice rose to a screech, but her hands trembled, betraying the fear gnawing at her insides. I didn't need to raise my voice. Calmly, I pointed at the emblem and said, "Karen, you just ordered the unlawful towing of a trailer containing sealed police gear. Do you realize that interfering with this equipment could result in charges far beyond anything you can imagine?" The driver swore under his breath, unhooked the chains with shaking hands, and backed away as if the trailer might explode. That was when the sirens cut through the air, approaching fast. 2 cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Karen puffed out her chest, ready to deliver her version of events, but the words never came. The officers stepped out, saw me, and snapped into familiarity. "Sergeant, you all right?" one asked. The crowd erupted in gasps. Heads turned toward Karen, who stood frozen, her mouth hanging open. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected me to be part of the very system she thought she could weaponize. I explained the situation, showing them my ID, the trailer contents, and my video recording of Karen directing the tow. The officers listened, faces grim, then turned to her. "Ma'am, do you realize what you've done? This isn't just trespassing or harassment. You interfered with protected property and made a false emergency call." Karen's hands flailed as she tried to salvage her authority. "No, I was just protecting the neighborhood." I was following the rules. He's making this up to humiliate me. But the officers weren't buying it. Then came the twist. From behind the crowd, a neighbor I barely knew, Mr. Chun, a quiet engineer who kept to himself, stepped forward. He held a small folder in his hands, his voice steady but sharp. I've been documenting Karen's abuses for months. Fake citations, threats, even trespassing onto my yard to measure my hedges. I thought no one would believe me, but now. He handed the folder to the officers. Inside were photographs, copies of false notices, even recordings of Karen ranting about how she would control every inch of this neighborhood. The evidence was damning, and it came not from me, but from someone unexpected, a man she had overlooked, thinking his silence meant compliance. The officers didn't hesitate. They read Karen her rights on the spot, cuffing her as she screamed about conspiracies and betrayal. She twisted against their grip, shrieking, "You're all against me. This is my neighborhood. I'm the law here." But the more she fought, the clearer it became to everyone that she was not a leader, only a bully stripped bare in front of the people she once terrorized. As the squad car pulled away, the crowd broke into murmurs, some relieved, others furious that it had taken so long for justice to come. Mr. Chun looked at me and nodded. Fear kept us quiet. But not anymore. That night, I sat by the pool, the trailer safely locked again, listening to the hum of a neighborhood finally breathing free. The glow of the police emblem inside reminded me of how close Karen had come to crossing a line she could never return from. She thought she could weaponize rules and intimidation against everyone, but she never expected her own arrogance to expose her in the most humiliating way possible. Karen towed my trailer, but in the end, she towed herself straight into downfall. And now I ask you, was her arrest and humiliation enough punishment for years of abuse? Or should someone like her face even harsher consequences for turning fear into power? Was this justice truly served? Or only the first step in dismantling the system she tried to build? The following days unfolded like a storm breaking over the neighborhood. Karen's arrest spread through town in whispers and headlines. What had once been a quiet street where people mowed their lawns under her watchful glare was suddenly the stage of a scandal everyone wanted to talk about. Neighbors who had lived in silence for years were suddenly unafraid to share their stories. At the grocery store, people stopped me in the aisle, lowering their voices as they said, "She tried to fine me for leaving my porch light on too long," or "She threatened me with foreclosure if I didn't cut down my oak tree." It was as if the entire community had been holding its breath. And now, finally, we were exhaling together. But Karen wasn't done fighting. From her holding cell, she managed to post bail through her allies on the HOA board. And within a week she was back in the neighborhood, her arrogance only bruised but not broken. She marched through the streets with stacks of violation notices in her arms, stuffing them into mailboxes like a desperate tyrant clinging to the last shreds of power. She didn't dare approach me directly, but I watched her point at my house and hiss to her companions, "He'll regret crossing me. He thinks his badge protects him, but I'll bury him in court." Her threats no longer carried the same weight, though. The people had seen too much. Still, I knew I couldn't underestimate her. Power-hungry people are most dangerous when cornered. That's when the prosecutor called me and explained that Karen's case was expanding. With Mr. Chen's evidence and others coming forward, they were building charges not just of harassment but of conspiracy, fraud, and misuse of funds. Apparently, she had siphoned off HOA dues for years to fund private vacations and luxury purchases. The trailer incident, though shocking, was only the tip of the iceberg. At the pretrial hearing, she tried to spin the narrative. Standing in front of the judge, she waved her hands dramatically, claiming she had been framed by jealous neighbors and a corrupt officer. She pointed at me across the courtroom, her voice rising. "He planted that emblem in the trailer to set me up. He manipulated everyone." But the evidence was ironclad. The chain of custody for the trailer, the official logs, the recordings, the neighbors' testimonies, it all painted one picture. And then the twist came. Emily, her niece, whom she had always bragged about putting through school with HOA stipends, walked into the courtroom holding a laptop. She was visibly nervous, but when she began speaking, Her words cut sharper than any lawyer's cross-examination. She revealed how Karen had forced her to manage HOA emails, delete incriminating ones, and even forge violation letters. But Emily hadn't deleted everything. She had quietly saved years of date mails between Karen and shady developers, discussions about targeting certain homeowners, jokes about watching them squirm. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as Emily projected the emails on a screen. One read, "The trailer guy is next. If he resists, we'll crush him with legal fees until he sells. Easy win." Another showed financial transfers from HOA accounts into Karen's personal credit line. And then, the most damning of all, "People fear me because I am the law here. Without fear, they are nothing." Karen's face turned crimson. She lunged at her niece across the room, shrieking, "How dare you betray me? You're nothing without me." Officers restrained her as the judge thundered for order. The image of Karen flailing, her empire collapsing in front of her blood relative, sealed her fate more than any document could. The trial ended quickly after that. Guilty on multiple counts: fraud, trespassing, false reporting, conspiracy, and abuse of authority. The sentence was harsher than anyone expected. Several years in prison, restitution of stolen funds, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board. The courtroom erupted in applause when the gavel came down, though I just sat there quietly, finally able to breathe. But what mattered most wasn't her downfall, it was what happened afterward. The county ordered the dissolution of the HOA, declaring it corrupt beyond repair. In its place, a voluntary neighborhood council was established, run transparently, with rotating leadership and open votes. The first act of the new council was to throw out every bogus fine Karen had ever issued. People cheered in the streets as piles of violation notices were burned in fire pits like kindling for freedom. And something else happened too. The community began to heal. The single mother Karen had harassed brought her kids over to my pool, their laughter echoing in the air. Mr. Chan, once a ghostly figure behind his hedges, joined barbecues and shared stories about his garden. Even Emily, though weighed down by guilt, was welcomed by the neighbors for her bravery. She told me once, with tears in her eyes, "I thought I was enabling her, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to stop her." The trailer itself became a symbol. The police emblem inside, once a secret, now stood as proof that even the most arrogant bully couldn't stand above the law. I kept it locked, of course, but sometimes when neighbors came by, I'd open it just enough for them to see the emblem gleaming in the dark. It reminded us all that no matter how strong fear feels, truth and justice are stronger. The night I finally sat on my porch in peace, the stars glittering above and the pool water calm, I thought about how close Karen had come to ruining me. She tried to tow my life away, to twist the law and silence me, but in the end, she exposed her own rot. Her empire crumbled not because of me alone, but because the community stood together, broke the silence, and refused to bow. Karen thought she could weaponize rules and fear. Instead, she towed herself into destruction. And now I ask you, is justice served by her prison sentence and the dismantling of her power? Or do you believe people like Karen, who thrive on fear and control, deserve something even harsher? Share your thoughts. Was this ending fair? Or did she get off too lightly?